Now, she has written more than 30 works of fiction, with a copy of her books bought every 4 minutes across the UK. But now, best-selling author Lesley Pearse has decided to tell her own story.
And what a story this is as well. It's called The Long and Winding Road. It documents Lesley's real-life journey, including a nearly 60-year search for the baby she had to give up as a teenager. And she joins us now alongside that baby, her son, Martin Hartland. Good morning to both of you. What a beautiful baby you have.
Oh, yes. He's still as lovely now as he was then.
Should we go back to the beginning, I suppose, about when you had to make that decision to give up your baby? Do you mind telling us about the circumstances of that?
I was determined to keep him. I did everything I could. But finally, when he was 4 months, I couldn't get a flat, you couldn't get a job, you couldn't get him in the nursery. It was just, everybody told me it was impossible before he was even born. And I didn't believe them. I thought I could do it.
Because you were how old?
I was 19 by the time he was born, but I was very immature 19, really, and I wanted a baby so badly. My only ambition in life was to have babies and get married and live happily ever after, but I kind of did it round the wrong way. But yes, I really wanted to have him. But at 4 months, I realised I couldn't go on like this, and it wasn't fair on him. He wasn't going to have a good life. So I finally just made the decision. I put him in a carry cot and I wheeled him across Regent's Park to the Adoption Society. And I thought, that they would take him immediately. I didn't mean that, but I knew if I wrote to them, I'd have too much time to think about it and change my mind. So that was pretty awful. It was tipping down with rain. And fortunately, they had actually 2 couples who were perfect for him. And a few weeks later, I had to hand him over just before Christmas. And that was just the worst thing in the world. It was like being executed, really, or waiting for an execution. And they took him out of my arms. And the woman who took him out of my arms, I thought she just wanted to cuddle him. And she was gone. And I was there. The door was locked and I was kicking it and screaming. And this old social worker said to me, "Just listen, Lesley." And so I shut up for a minute and I could hear this peal of joy, which must have been your adoptive mother, from upstairs. And she said, "Your sadness is that woman's joy." And that actually saved my bacon that day, because I kept thinking about that. And I still feel indebted to her for giving him such a good life and turning him into the man he is now.
And you didn't just think about that, but you thought about your baby every day for how many years?
Well, in the early years, I used to write a continual sort of diary of how I felt and wondering what he was doing and that sort of stuff. And I tried at one thing when I joined the Natural Parents Association to find him, but all the stuff was gone in a fire in the National Adoption Society, or so they said. And of course, it wasn't when he was 18. That was the year that they made it legal for the children to come forward and find the parents. So I was hoping. I remember we were coming back from Spain, and I said to my then husband, "Wouldn't it be wonderful if he turns up?" And to be fair to Nigel, he said, "I always wanted a boy." So it wouldn't have been shock horror if you turned up at the door. And of course, my 3 girls wanted a big brother.
So, Martin, how did this wonderful reunion come about?
Well, my wife, Svetlana, she put me up to do some DNA testing. So she was teasing me a lot about, I'm sure you're an Eskimo and things like that. So,
I'm sure you're an Eskimo.
So we said, well, we'll sort this out. We'll both get DNA testing done. And we got our results back, and I opened mine, and I was British-Irish. And she turned out to be 20% Inuit. So we had a lot of fun about her actually being an Eskimo. But through that, I got in contact with a second cousin over in Palm Springs, and I live in the US at the moment. So we went to visit him and his wife, John and Joanne, and I said there, I'm looking for my mother. Maybe you'll find her. Her name's Lesley Sargent, and I'd lost track of her because she'd got married and changed her name, and I wasn't sure what I knew her first name, which was Andrews, I think.
Yeah,
Lesley Andrews.
Pritchard, yeah.
And then we lost track.
Pearse.
So they said we're going to a family reunion in Ireland next summer. So she said we'll look out for her. And when they were there, they started talking to my mum there at that event, and she mentioned that her father was called Sergeant Sargent. And of course, immediately they realised that this was my mother. So they quickly sent me a video, and it was a Sunday just before Easter. And I went online and I found some information, and then we got in contact like that.
Wow.
They told me the next day before I flew back to Dublin, and they came down to breakfast with half a bottle of champagne. And I'd said the day before to my relations, because they were religious when I was younger, I don't really take any notice about God anymore, I don't go to church and things. And as we left there, I said, I believe in God now. Because that's what it felt like. The hand of God had come down and decided, put right this wrong for so many years.
And that moment when you came back... Oh, I'm not surprised. You're right.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Tell us about that moment when you finally got to meet.
Well, we were at the hotel there in London, and he came through the door. And I can't really remember, I all I remember is hugging you. And the concierge said to me afterwards, he knows me quite well, he said, well, now what was all that about? And I said, I'll tell you another day. And I hadn't seen him since. Yeah, well, he doesn't even know about the book yet, I haven't seen him. But it was odd, really, because you don't really know what to talk about, because there's just so much to carry.
Where to start?
Look at that. Look at that. I bet you can't believe it when you see that picture, can you, Lesley?
No, it was amazing. And a girlfriend of mine was with me, and she kept coming round the corner with a white hanky and waving it like the white flag. And it was all very, very funny. And, I mean, I knew so many people were rooting for me because they knew that I was meeting him that day and how much it meant to me. So that's nice. You're bolstered up by all those friends and family that care.
There was a lovely moment, I hope you don't mind me sharing, just before we came on air, when you said to us, and you looked at him, you looked at Martin and said, I could have picked him out of a lineup. He has the same face that he had at 4 months old. And he's still your baby.
Yes.
Isn't he?
Yes. I mean, my first thing when I saw him, I wanted to get hold of his face like that, like you do with babies, the little fat cheeks. And
You can! You can!
Yeah, but you hold back because you think this is a bit silly. Come on, we're grown-ups now. But yes, it's that wonderful. And I haven't forgotten anything. I've got an extraordinarily good memory, I must say, but I'm glad I can remember it all so clearly.
It's so lovely to see the bond between you both and to hear the whole story. And, you know, you've got a lot of catching up to do still, haven't you? But,
yes, I mean, he's in my book. He can read my whole life story there. So I want him to sit down with me one of these days if I can keep him with me for 5 minutes. Because he's always off on a boat or
hold
doing
those cheeks and keep him in play.
And say, now, come on, tell me, when did you lose your first teeth? When did you learn to swim?
Fill in
all
the gap.
Stuff.
Thank you both so much. Lesley's memoir, it's called The Long and Winding Road, and it's out now.